Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. We continue with our rolling coverage here from the Results Center. I'm now joined by the IEC's Mr. Sai Mamabolo. Mr. Mamabolo, pardon me. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, and we're happy to be joining the SABC.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Perhaps to start with the Democratic Alliance. They've gone on to express that they will be lodging a complaint against the IEC for what they term shambolic elections. We've also spoken to the economic freedom fighters. They've also indicated that they plan to lodge a complaint as well, stating that particularly when it comes to the leaderboard, this is not the first time they've had issues in several elections. There have been those kind of issues. Just talk to us about this.
No, it's not so. It is not so. The leader, we've never had a problem with the leaderboard before, insofar as I'm aware. And of course, if any party wishes to lodge an objection, it is part of the legal framework. The Commission will evaluate that objection for its materiality and arrive at a decision. So it's part of the process that anyone who remains aggrieved is able to lodge an objection.
Mm-hmm. And when is the deadline for lodging those objections?
Objections are due by 9 o'clock today.
Okay, 9 o'clock in the evening. But beyond this, you have conceded that there have been issues. I mean, you have conceded that indeed there have been issues. You've apologized to citizens. So would you say that at this point you feel that the elections have been handled in the most satisfactory way?
Any election will have its own issues. You're dealing here with a program involving 23,000 points. You're dealing here with a program involving 200,000 people, staff members. You're dealing here with a program involving 27 million, potentially, voters. So a program of that magnitude will have one or another issue. So and that's what I'm saying, and that's why the law provides that if you're unhappy, you vindicate your rights by lodging an objection.
Mm-hmm. And then give us the very latest insofar as the capturing or processing of the votes.
Yes, 85% complete now, and will soon be hitting 90%. And will remain at it until we conclude the process.
Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, just remind us of the process to follow.
Beyond that, we'll have the Commission declare the results officially, after which we'll do a seat assignment and publish the names of those elected in the Government Gazette and hand over that list also to the Chief Justice, who will then convene within 14 days of the declaration, who will convene the first sitting of the National Assembly.
Mm-hmm. And then for the benefit of those who might not have heard the explanation, there's been the conversation around underfunding of the IEC. Treasury has come out and stated that that is not the case. In fact, 250 was actually even handed over. Just talk us through this conversation around funding, where you have also stated that no, we had the necessary funds.
No. We've not raised the issue of funding. Mm-hmm. We don't think we're not swimming in money, obviously, but neither are we stuffed of money. So we've not raised that issue. The issues are not related to funding. They are related to other elements like the non-functionality of the voter management devices, which is not a budget issue.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the VMDs, some say you sought to downplay the severity of the problem here because you went on to state that it didn't actually affect the credibility of the election or just the voting process. The only thing it meant was that it would take a longer process now to find the people's names manually, but they were purchased for the very reason to speedy up the process.
They were purchased for a number of reasons, not only to check people on the voters' roll. They were purchased to register people, to enroll staff, to monitor the ballot usage in the voting station, and so on. So they were not purchased for that singular function. Now, the point that we're raising is the fact that the VMD is not functional or whatever the case is does not stop the process. The process
Indeed.
can go on because there's a voter's roll of certified people at that voting station.
But the process does become slightly longer. It's not as quick as you would have loved it to be.
In fact, some are saying the VMD itself was slowing the
Delaying.
process. So it's not a forgone thing that if you were using the VMD, it was going to be faster necessarily.
So lessons learned with these elections?
Let's get through the result, declare the results. We'll have occasion to debrief and look at things to improve for the future. But for now, it is important that we get to a point where we give a country a result.
All right, Mr. Mamabolo, thank you very much for your time this evening. That's IEC CEO Sai Mamabolo speaking to us. All right, we continue our conversation now. We'll be speaking to Mr. Sandile Swana just to get analysis post that conversation with Sai, just to find out where many people place the performance of the IEC currently. We do know that the Democratic Alliance has expressed its intention to lodge a formal complaint relating to how the IEC handled these elections. They've thanked the electorate for supporting them, for standing in the queues. Mr. Swana, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Just your reaction to some of the political parties stating that they'll be lodging a complaint.
Yes, I thank you so much for the interview, but it is proper that they raise the complaints, and hopefully they first weight whether the complaint has substance or not, or it's material or not. And those complaints will be addressed speedily. But I suspect, looking at the process as a whole, I mean, I've spent a lot of time here, taking the process as a whole, I don't think there is any complaint that will materially change the results of a particular party. But all complaints have to be taken into consideration.
So them just saying the running of the elections insofar as the queues are concerned, what happened with the leaderboard, because the EFF has said that this has happened on numerous occasions, that at the last elections, the same thing happened, but it was in Gauteng, where the leaderboard just crashed, although they clarified, the IEC, that they wouldn't necessarily term it as a crashing, but just that the leaderboard did not display the results.
Yes, some of these things, we don't consider them properly sometimes. But when you run an operation, when you're running an operation like this 15 years ago, let's say for the sake of argument, the infrastructure, the power supply, and all the infrastructure that supports the digital world in South Africa was very different. The minute you start stealing cables, you start doing all sorts of things to infrastructure, the electronic equipment also suffers. And I'm not saying this is the case here, but just remember that that also happens. So there's a lot of other extraneous factors that change the landscape that we operate in. And also people must not say when a screen goes off, they think that the processors of the computers have gone off.
Yeah.
Because the screen is just a display device. So it can be that it's not displaying, but the integrity of the machine is still in order.
And then let's look at the numbers as they stand now. The ANC has breached the 5 million mark. It's followed by the Democratic Alliance at 2.7 and then MK at 1.6. Your take on just this picture, particularly the MK's emergence?
The emergence of MK in terms of political entrepreneurship is most impressive. As a first attempt, I think it's record-setting. Really is absolutely impressive the way they've done it. The numbers of the ANC, people have seen the ANC gathering more than 10 million votes at a time in one election in the past. But the numbers right now look quite modest at about, is it 4.5 million or something?
They're now at 5.09.
5.0 now, which is far, far from what we've known them for. So it's a sign that the trend of the past 15 years of service delivery failure has really created a problem in the database of voters in South Africa.
There are some who are of the view that the MK is benefiting from what some would call an aggrieved sector in society. Would you say that that is the sole reason that we've seen this amount of support for the MK? Or legitimately, those who have supported and voted for the MK did so not because they aggrieved, but because they wanted to support or resonate, or the policies of the MK resonate with them?
So what we cannot deny is that at this point in time, there are many aggrieved South Africans. So MK was born at a time perhaps where the pain and the disappointment of the population was reaching boiling point. And MK emerged, rightly or wrongly, as a potential messiah out of the blue. So there is that type of thing. Plus, we must not deny the organizational skills of Jacob Zuma as a trained operative of the underground movement of the African National Congress, and Umkhonto Wesizwe itself within the borders of South Africa and KZN in particular.
And then the performance of the economic freedom fighters. My colleague Natasha Piri spoke to Floyd Shibambo a bit earlier on. He said they're quite satisfied with their showing. And he says that what we're seeing here is a tectonic shift, and it has left nobody unscathed. The ANC, the DA, the IFP. Your take on just their performance?
The performance of the EFF in particular, relative to MK, I suppose that's the new factor, because if you didn't factor in MK, then it's a different number. I think the numbers of the EFF were impacted by MK, and there's an education, political education for the EFF to say they need to define their political market more clearly and away perhaps even from the market of people like the ANC and the MK type, because there's a market that is totally unattended there, because now some of the people who have used the EFF as temporary shelter, running away from the ANC, now found a second home in the MK party and ran there.
So meaning they're going to have to redefine themselves as a political party insofar as their policies are even concerned. Then let's look at the Democratic Alliance, because they've performed fairly well. Yes, the numbers have not yet been declared, but it looks as though, particularly in the Western Cape, they're going to take it. But everywhere else, they are seeing some sort of a growth. But unfortunately, those within the multi-party charter are not growing. So meaning probably the multi-party charter itself might lead to naught insofar as anything is concerned of them consolidating power and leading government.
The multi-party charter, in terms of its original objectives, has already failed. Many of us have suspected from the start that it is a non-starter.